your leisure. So before I hand over to our two awesome presenters today, I just wanted to give you a little insight for those of you that may be new to Soda. Today's product showcase is going to be how to detect bad quality data in business reporting. And I think this is a use case, a scenario that resonates with many of you joining. At Soda, our mission is simple. We want to empower or enable everyone that's in your organization to share and use high quality data. And that mission starts with gaining trust in your data. So whether you're creating internal reports for operational efficiency or being able to provide insights for strategic decisions or building dashboards for leadership, I think we all know that scenario. Reliable data is the foundation for everything. So today, what you're going to see and what we'll show you is how to check and ensure data quality in your reporting processes so that the insights that you deliver are trusted, accurate, and actionable. And this isn't a job just for engineers. Let's not be fooled here. Business users and data teams need to be able to collaborate. And by working together, you can really get that alignment and visibility into the data that drives your organization's most critical decisions. So without further ado, we're going to dive in. I'm going to hand you over and put you in the very capable hands of Vivi and Arthur. Over to you both.
Thank you for the introduction, Tash. So hi, everyone. So today, the webinar topic will be about detecting bad quality data in business reporting. So I'm Arthur. I'm a customer engineer at Soda. And today I'll be assisted with a fellow customer engineer at Soda, Vivi. So without further ado, let's see. Let's adjust the slides quickly. There we go. So as Tash mentioned, Soda is all about helping you ensure data quality in your organization. And how Soda achieves this is with its 4 core product capabilities. So in terms of data observability, Soda helps data engineers monitor data in production, stay aware of any data quality issues via alerts so that they can debug data and fix pipelines as soon as possible. It also allows business users to create business checks with our self-serve no-code Soda Cloud user interface. They can either create their own data quality checks or they can do so with the help of built-in Soda AI. From these checks, they can also create discussions and raise incidents around the data quality checks. On top of that, on top of just detecting data quality issues, Soda also allows engineering and technical users to run data quality checks as early and as frequently as possible in pipelines so that the same data quality issues can be prevented from repeating over and over again. As for business users, with the help of Soda, they can do operational data quality, where they can route issues and direct these issues to data sources and data owners so that a permanent and preventive fix can be found. And for today, the agenda here. So today, the webinar will be divided into 3 main parts. We'll first have a look at a use case where there is undetected bad quality data in business operations at a company called ADOS, which is where Vivi and I will be fictionally working for. After which, we'll have a look at how Soda helps to detect this bad quality data via no-code checks as well as data observability. And finally, not just detection, but we'll also have a look at how Soda can help to prevent data quality issues at ADOS via operational data quality as well as pipeline testing. So with the agenda clear now, we can have a look at the use case for today. So it's business ops at ADOS. It's a team that both Vivi and I belong to. Vivi will be role-playing in the role of a data analyst. So she's like a business user. She does not work with Python and coding, etc. And we'll see how she can interact with our Soda Cloud user interface. I am, on the other hand, a data engineer. I work with code, I build pipelines, and I'm more of a technical user. And in the center of this slide, you'll see, for example, a sample of sales data that we work with. And here you can already see that there's a data quality issue where in the sales amount column, you can see that there's a negative sales amount value, which should not be expected and has to be detected and fixed as well. So not just giving sample data to make the use case more realistic, here's also some snippets of a conversation that we might unfortunately be all too familiar with. So for example, you have Vivi. She received a very angry email, for example, from another team. A colleague has found negative sales amounts in a sales report that we, the business operations team, is responsible for, and she has to contact me to find a fix. And then after that, maybe just a few days later, someone else, for example, someone from the leadership team, a new chief operations officer, is very angry with us at the business operations team because, as we know, bad quality data can be very costly and expensive. And here we see, for example, that a negative sales amount in a dashboard has led to a very, very costly wrong decision. And so once again, we in the business operations team are under fire. And also it is very embarrassing that once again, this negative sales amount has been detected by someone outside from our team. So Vivi, who is very concerned because her salary could be under review because of all this poor quality data, she has to run SQL queries manually and daily. It's very tedious, but is there no better way? And so as a data engineer, I did some research for a data quality tool. I chanced upon something called Soda. So what I have done is to add Vivi to a new organization in the Soda cloud user interface. And now I'll hand the time over to Vivi so that we can see how easy it is for a business user to be onboarded in Soda and to create no code and self-serve checks. So over to you, Vivi.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Arthur. So let me just quickly share my screen. Can you verify that you see my screen properly?
Yes, I see it.
Awesome. So as mentioned, we have spotted some data quality issues in our reporting, and here I am joining for the first time Soda Cloud after just seeing a few information or received a very small training just to show how easy it is actually to use and identify the problem using Soda Cloud. If I go under data sets, I'm actually able to see all of the properties that are made available for me to consume in my organization. So everything that Arthur has made available for me to see within the solution. And if I further expand on this, initially I'm able to see some basic KPIs about this data set, meaning how many checks I have associated to that, a health evolution over time, as well as an incident calendar in case there are open problems within the solution. And then below, I also see all of the checks that have been associated to this specific table. If I click in my columns tab, I'm actually able to consume profiling information that Soda makes available the moment we onboard our data sources in the solution. And in the case that we have a numerical column, as in this case, we see some basic statistics, so like minimum, maximum averages, as well as a histogram of this column that gives us an idea of the distribution of what is happening. And then in the case it is a categorical column, I see as well some basic statistics and a bar chart of the most frequent values that are found in my data. Scrolling a bit further below, I'm actually able to identify the problematical column, meaning the sales amount, which is where we detected the negative sales. And I can expand from here and already see that there is a minimum value of minus 4.99, which is not correct and has caused a lot of issues down the stream. So from here, I can actually initiate a new check to ensure that it's going to be validated against my data and nothing similar repeats in the future. Scrolling a bit up, I see the button Add Check. And if I click on this, what I see is a guided UI wizard where basically Soda provides with some checks out of the box. What we have here is the possibility in just a few clicks to set up basic checks around data quality dimensions. And we have the opportunity of adding a missing check, validity, numeric, duplicate, row count, freshness, and schema. We have the possibility of just starting a discussion with other people in my organization or other stakeholders, or I can even add custom SQL to basically validate my logic against the data. Since I already have a query prepared that I execute on a daily basis to check about these specific rules, I can actually trigger a SQL metric. And what we see here is that we have already pre-filled some information around the dataset where we're going to execute this check alongside with a related column, as well as the scan definition, which is basically a collection of all the checks that we will specify in the solution executed at a specific point in time. So we see here that this is going to be triggered tomorrow at 1. Another nice feature that Soda provides is the possibility of using Soda AI as an assistant to either help me write SQL from scratch or validate my existing query. So from here, I can ask Soda AI to provide me with a relevant query that will make sure that no negative sales are identified in my data. And I can actually go and directly insert it from here. And I also see a small explanation of why it came up with this recommendation. And the nice thing is that also Soda AI works in multiple languages, so it can be defined in any language except English. But what I've already seen in the previous view, so in the guided UI wizard, is that I have some check offerings out of the box. And I don't really have to do something very complex with SQL, but what also covers my case is a validity check. So I can actually add this check using one of the no-code environments in Soda. We again see the same information pre-filled. So we have the table and data source, as well as our scan definition. I can pass a name to my check. So I can say sales must be positive. I can add a filter to specify that this rule must be executed only in a certain segment of my data. But in this case, I actually want to validate it against the whole data set. And then, of course, I specify my column, and I can select between the different validity rules that are made available for me through Soda. So I have the option of valid or invalid formats, a list of values, as well as a valid value regex. But in my case, what I would actually have to use is the minimum, and I should specify that being 0. So in no case, I want my sales amount to be less than 0. Below, we have the alerting that can come afterwards as a next step after setting up this check. And within Soda, we can have a differentiation between failing and warning. So we can specify 2 different thresholds depending on the severity of our rule. But in my case, it's actually very important that I have no negative records in my data, and this is why I will only specify a failing condition. And I will say every time it's more than 0, please make sure that the check fails. From here, I can test and see that everything is properly input in the no-code template. I can also see the Soda CL, which basically shows me the syntax behind this check and what is executed in the background. This is YAML-based, very user-friendly and readable, and this is also the way how we specify checks in a more of a programmatical way, as Arthur is going to show us in a bit. Finally, if I have the right permissions within the solution, I'm able to directly add the check into production. But as we see here, I only have the possibility of proposing this check because I have restricted permissions, and this is what I'm going to do. Once I click on Propose Checks, we see a new discussion opening up. And of course, the person responsible for this data source is notified, but in our case, we have also integrated that with our Slack channels. So I can actually see already a notification popping up in my Slack channel. Let me quickly move my screen here. So as you can see, a new data quality discussion has been started for me. And we also have the possibility directly from here to go back in Soda and access that. So from now on, giving back the mic to Arthur, we will see how he can tackle that and continue with further adopting this check in our data sets.
Thank you,
Arthur,
Vivi.
back to you.
Yes, thank you, Vivi, for proposing exactly the data quality check that we need. So give me a moment to share my screen now. Yes, so you would see from Vivi's Slack channel, because we are both in the Slack channel for ADOS sales and for all things related to the sales data. So you would see that I, as the data owner, as the manager of data pipelines for this sales data, I have also received the discussion that Vivi has proposed a check. And as Vivi mentioned, if just a simple click, I can be ready and review the the check that Vivi has just proposed. So here in this discussion, you can see that with clicking of the review button, I can see exactly the same form that Vivi filled in and all the input values that she has included. I can also review the Soda checks language just to be sure, and it's a language that I'm familiar with. It's YAML based, as Vivi mentioned. And here, an additional thing that I might want to do is, for example, to propose an alternative. I could, for example, add an attribute, which is a very powerful feature in Soda. So an example of an attribute, for example, would be domain. And because this data is related to the sales domain, I would then select the option of the sales domain. And attributes are very powerful, as mentioned, in two ways. The first is that it can be used to streamline notifications in a very granular way. So you can imagine, for example, in the ADOS sales Slack channel that Vivi and I are in, I can actually set up notifications that that channel only receives alerts for checks that have been tagged with the attribute of domain sales. So in this case, because I'm satisfied with just adding the attribute and I'm happy with the check, as Vivi mentioned, she only had the role-based permissions to propose the check. But in my case, because I'm the data owner, I'm managing the sales data, so I can directly approve and add this check and schedule it based on the schedule definition that Vivi selected. And now once this check is approved and scheduled, I can actually also execute it on an ad hoc basis. And later on, we can see actually the results of this check. So heading on back to the slides, and just to summarize what we've just seen, I will share this in full screen mode. So what we have just seen is actually the use of Soda for the detection of data quality issues. So firstly, we saw how we could use Soda to create no-code checks. So that was Vivi with the form wizard and filling up that form for the check that we just saw. And we can see how that she could do it completely on her own with minimal training, or with the help of Soda AI, for example, to create the right SQL query or to work with regular expression patterns, for example. And of course, we also saw the discussion that Vivi created when she proposed that new check. As for a technical user myself, we saw how I could also collaborate with Vivi on creating and approving that data quality check, and how we could then use that to monitor our data in production and raise the necessary notifications. So on this note, on top of just creating checks, an important question you might be wondering now is how Soda actually connects to our data. So in Soda, you would be able to access a list of your data sources. And just to quickly have a look at how a data source connection is created without getting too technical, here we just have to select a Soda agent, and how this Soda agent works is that it actually takes the data quality checks that business users such as Vivi create in the UI. It translates and optimizes this into SQL, which is then executed on your data warehouse. And the results are then taken as aggregated data and metrics, and these are then put back into the Soda Cloud UI for users to review and to do operational data quality, for example. And of course, in the process of connecting to your data source, you also have to, for example, input the necessary credentials and configurations, and you will also tell Soda exactly which data sets and which columns you want to be registered in the user interface. So that is for detection, and that was also the topic of our webinar, but we are not done for the webinar. So one thing we see with just detection in terms of data quality, as you see from the picture below, there are two main limitations of a purely detection approach to data quality. If you see the many ringing bells, that's what we know commonly as alert fatigue, where we constantly receive notifications of bad data, for example, in production, without actually knowing how to solve it. Another issue with just detection is if you see all the skull and crossbones, is that we have bad data ending up in production, whereas we could have, for example, stopped it earlier on in the pipeline where it originated from. And that is why Soda wants to take data quality to the next level by allowing both business and technical users to take a preventive approach to data quality. So if we head back into the Soda Cloud user interface, and we head back into that check that Vivi and I just created, Here we can see how SODA allows business users to take a preventive approach to data quality with what we call operational data quality. So in the check that Vivi just created, once it is run, you can see immediately what we call a failed rows analysis, where you see the rows that actually caused this to fail. So because we did not want negative sales amounts, you can see that the rows are displayed here. So you can imagine a business user like Vivi entering into the SODA Cloud user interface and, for example, investigating these rows, and they might see and spot, for example, that there's a common trend that the product key seems to be similar among all these 3 rows that have the negative sales amount. So that is one approach and one way that SODA allows users to conduct operational data quality. So you can imagine in the back of Vivi and I discussing how exactly we should tackle this negative sales amount. And since the product key is similar, perhaps it is an issue with a source table that might be, for example, the product. So how does SODA, on top of the failed rows analysis, allow people to take a preventive approach to data quality? That's where the Python-based SODA library comes in. So you can imagine having found out that the source table dim product is the cause of these negative sales amounts, we can actually leverage, for example, the SODA library in a Databricks notebook. But because the SODA library is Python-based, so you can imagine running this code anywhere where Python can also be invoked. So that's, for example, in Airflow pipelines, in Azure Data Factory, etc. So here, without getting too technical, we'll just have a look at the rough outline of how the SODA library can be used to take a preventive approach to data quality. So as part of your code, as part of your notebook, you would of course have to install and prepare the necessary SODA libraries. So in this case, I've installed the SODA library for Spark because, for example, I will be creating data quality checks on a Spark data frame. So earlier we mentioned that SODA can connect to any SQL-based warehouse as a data source, but SODA can also run data quality checks on any data that can fit in a data frame. So we are talking Spark and Pandas. So in this case, we are looking at a Spark data frame, and you can see that in a notebook with the SODA library, I can read in the data as a Spark data frame and prepare this data frame so that I can then proceed to create checks that I will run on this data frame. So here you see the checks are written in the SODA checks language that we saw earlier. As Vivi mentioned, it's a human-readable YAML-based language. And you can see, for example, that I, as an engineering user, as part of this notebook or as part of a pipeline, I could simply include a check to ensure that, for example, a value, in this case, the list price, is not negative, so that if it is negative, it will not then flow into, for example, our production data warehouse. So on top of the checks, another important part of running SODA as part of your pipeline or as part of your notebook is to connect, for example, to SODA Cloud and to your data source. In this case, that connection is not necessary because our data source is a Spark data frame as a part of this notebook. So once you have your checks and your configurations, your connection configurations ready, you can then simply run this execute, which is part of the SODA library. It will then execute all the checks that you have defined, a few lines of code above. And then here you can see nice logs of exactly which checks have passed, which have given a warning, and which have failed. And one very powerful feature of the SODA library for the preventive data quality approach that we mentioned is what we call circuit breakers. So you can see here, once the scan and once the data quality checks are executed, you can see that nothing else has proceeded. The print has not been printed because this circuit breaker here ensures that this notebook and this pipeline does not proceed on if any check has failed, so that bad data is stopped at this stage of the pipeline. And that is the summary for the preventive approach to data quality. So if I share this slide, so just a summary of the 4 core product capabilities that we saw as part of this webinar. So we have SODA for the detection of data quality issues, allowing business users to create no-code checks, and allowing technical users to collaborate with these business users and also help in the technical setup for data observability. But as mentioned, there are definitely limitations to just taking a detection approach. For example, you get alert fatigue and you do not solve the root cause of your data quality issues. And that is why SODA wants to allow you to take a preventive approach and shift left in terms of data quality in your pipeline, where we have, for example, failed rows analysis, which enables users to conduct operational DQ and find the root cause of data quality issues in data sources. And we also saw how the SODA library, for example, in a Databricks notebook or anywhere where that Python can be run, to conduct pipeline testing, so we can test for data quality as early and as frequently as possible in our pipelines. So if you look at the image below, now we have bad data at different stages of the pipeline. We receive just a single or maybe just a few notifications, but with the preventive approach, we can immediately apply a preventive and permanent fix to our data issues. So we have SODA at the center. So that was the creation of checks and the 4 core product capabilities that we saw earlier. But just to highlight that SODA is not an isolated tool or piece of software in the modern data stack. It integrates well with many tools. For example, we saw how Vivi and I could collaborate using Slack, but SODA also allows and connects with other popular communication tools such as Microsoft Teams and also ticketing tools for the raising of incidents. And in terms of data sources and orchestration, we also saw Databricks and also the connection to our Postgres data source. But SODA connects to many other data sources, SQL-based warehouses, Spark and Pandas data frames, for example. SODA is also, with the help of our SODA Cloud API, able to connect to popular metadata and dashboarding tools so that with SODA and with the SODA Cloud API, you can then integrate and spread data quality awareness throughout your organization with the help of other tools. And with that, we have come to the end of the webinar. And do we still have time for questions, Tash? Maybe.
Absolutely. That was a bumper-packed, almost roller coaster speed introduction to preventing bad quality data in business reports. Thank you so much, Arthur and Vivi. So for those of you watching, we are now open for questions, and you can do that. Send those through using the Q&A panel. Just sneakily taken over there. Arthur, there was one question that popped in actually just as you were showing that summary when you started talking about how to visualize and sort of share what's within SODA Cloud through the integrations. And the question was around if there are other ways to detect data quality besides just the notification. So I think we saw the notifications coming up in Slack for you and Vivi. And getting sort of a global overview. So what would you, and I took away screen sharing, but actually you need to, if you can share an answer, that would be great.
So indeed, I will have to share my screen again. One moment. And yes, thank you for that question. So for sure, there are other ways to stay aware of data quality issues and detect them on top of notifications in, for example, communication tools like Slack. So if let me share that again. I think it's Google Chrome. Let me find the right window. There we go. So yes, on top of just notifications in Slack, as mentioned, we have the SODA Cloud API. So for example, you can create a very customized and well-spliced dashboards like these. So if you remember earlier on in the check, I added an attribute and I mentioned that it can be used to streamline notifications. So another powerful use case of those attributes is, for example, to create and customize dashboards like these, which give you a nice overview of data quality in your organization. For example, you can, with attributes, splice the status of your data quality checks based on team. For example, whether it's from sales, data engineering, or data science, etc. You can also splice and detect any data quality issues depending on the pillar in terms of data quality. So for example, validity, you can actually see how many checks specifically have failed for validity so that you can detect them and also prevent them with SODA. And on top of just dashboards, You can also integrate Soda with, for example, popular catalog tools, for example, Atlan that we're looking at here. And you can see, for example, you can display the status of data quality checks in catalog tools. And on top of that, you can also leverage such tools to have an overall high-level view. I believe that was what you mentioned, Tash. Yes, to see data quality, not just for a specific table or specific check, but you can integrate so that you can see exactly what is going on with a nice eagle eye view of your entire data system and architecture.
That's fantastic. And then another question has come in when you talked about shifting left. Just an overview if and what Soda is doing around data contracts.
Yes, Soda's actually looking into making sure that data contracts sort of introduce data ownership in an organization so that it's not just, for example, engineers and business users doing their own thing, but with data contracts, we establish data ownership and we shift left so that, for example, the creators of tables, the producers of tables, they can take charge of the tables for which they are part of a data contract so that they can use the right tools to ensure that the data contract is sort of obeyed and the data is produced as expected from that data contract.
Fantastic. So that's more around that collaboration and
Exactly.
ensuring that the alignment is there. Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you. I enjoyed it. And I hope everyone else did as well. So, next steps. We're here to support you and would love to see as many of you getting successful or getting started with Soda Cloud and becoming successful. 3, getting next actions for you. Join the Soda community on Slack. So that's where you can connect with us. Vivi, Arthur, and the rest of the team are there, and lots of other users. We can answer questions, troubleshoot, and share tips. Plus, you can also learn from fellow community members who are able to share their experiences using Soda, but also maybe some of those first use cases and business challenges to tackle for that low-hanging fruit and quick wins. Book a demo if you want something a little bit more personalized. Vivi, Arthur, Tyler, Eric, and Matisse, our customer engineering team, are there to build a demo specific to your business needs once you've spoken with the team. They can really help set things up, answer those questions one-on-one, and help guide you through. And lastly, we've got fantastic documentation where you can dive into some pretty comprehensive and user-friendly guides, use cases, and best practices around check types that you can set up, some of the common use cases that we see in terms of reconciliation checks and so forth. So with that, Vivi, Arthur, thank you. Thank you for bringing this use case to life and taking on your alter egos. Our next showcase is going to be very, very specific to data engineers on testing data quality in an Azure Data Factory pipeline. It's taking place on December 5th, I think around the same time as this one. So you can sign up on soda.io or scan that QR code and get the link. And we hope to see you there. So for now, thank you for your time. Thank you for participating. And until next time, take care, everyone.